One way to avoid overtime altogether would be to score more points during the game itself, and that's particularly relevant to what the Chargers did last night because of all these newfangled analytics approaches that result in Brandon Staley, the coach of the team, one of the candidates for Coach of the Year, going for it on fourth down, eschewing the field goal in an effort to get the touchdown. And I've said time and again, you got to score touchdowns, not field goals, to beat the Chiefs. Now, that's not today's Chiefs. That's Chiefs of a year, 2, 3 years ago. It's always nice to get some points on the board. And let's hear from Brandon Staley. Before we criticize any more than I plan to, I don't know about you, Myles, but I plan to criticize some of these decisions. Here's Brandon Staley talking about his proclivity to go for it on fourth down.
That's the way we're going to play around here. That's the way we're going to play. And, when we have a quarterback like ours and we have an offense like ours, that's the way we're going to play because that's how you need to play against Kansas City for sure. And that's how we're going to become the team that we're ultimately capable of being. It's life in the NFL in decision making like that. And I think that from where my mindset is that I know that the quickest way to win a game like that is to score touchdowns, not field goals, especially considering who's on the other side. And to me, when you feel like you're in an advantage situation, when you don't feel like it's a gamble, when you feel like this is an advantage for you, then that's going to be our mindset. Okay, and I don't think that any decision that I made tonight, was a gamble. We felt like it was an advantage situation for us, and that's why we did it. If we didn't feel like that was the case, then we would have kicked a field goal or we would have punted. And that's the way we're going to do things around here. And, I know that our team embraces that mindset, and we're going to continue to do it every game we play moving forward.
They failed on 3 of 5 fourth down attempts, but part of it was the circumstance, the long kickoff return to start the game and no points because they went for it on 4th and goal from the 5 and the ball came out there. They almost had it. They went for it on 4th and 2 in the third quarter in plus territory, eschewing a field goal that would have been, looks like it would have been about, 45, 47 yards. They had another one deep in Kansas City territory where they went for the first down instead of the field goal. And I disagree with the idea, as I said earlier, that you necessarily must have touchdowns against these Chiefs because these aren't the 42-point-per-game Chiefs. I know they just rolled up 48 on the Raiders, but they're different than they were. Now they're getting better, but they're different. And also, I just think at the end of the half, right? Wasn't it the end of the half?
Yeah.
When they could have had 3 and going up 17-10 and just have that little psychological edge. I think that's what and I don't want to. I'm just it's going to be a long day, and I don't need the analytics mob up my ass today because they are really reasonable and flexible, and they're very open to different ideas. They understand that sometimes the 49% makes more sense than the 51, even though 51 is greater than 49. I am aware of that, and I am aware that, if you flip that coin a million times, it's better to always go with the 51 side. But we don't have the luxury of doing it a million times. We're doing it one time, in one setting, with one team against another team. And that's the thing that I feel like anytime you try to have that conversation, anytime you try to bring reality into these discussions, you get shouted down. You're stupid. You're dumb. How dare you? How dare you disrespect the numbers? The numbers don't.
Right.
No, the numbers say you always go for it here. No matter how small the difference is, 51 to 49, 50.00001 to 49.99999. You always do. Come on. You got to think about things like, wait, we had this long touchdown, this long kick return, and we get nothing out of it. We're going into halftime. We'd rather be up 17-10 than 14-10. Yeah, it'd be great to make it 21-10, but that's part of the risk you're taking when you do this, and there is risk involved. It is a gamble. I understand that they're trying to turn it into a mathematical equation, and we're going to do this all the time. We're always going to be this way. I think that there's a danger in being that rigid in your thinking. And what we've done is we've replaced the model that used to be you always did the conventional thing with you always do the thing that the numbers tell you to do. I think reality is best played out in the middle ground where, sometimes the conventional thing, that's not what we're going to do. Sometimes the thing the numbers tell us to do, that's not what we're going to do. That's where I think the best coaches are going to reside.
Okay, yes, but I also think it's important to have an identity. And so this is kind of like what Mike Tomlin was saying about the Ravens, a couple of weeks ago when the Ravens decided to go for 2. And Mike Tomlin said, that makes them a little bit predictable because we know that they're going to be aggressive. That's just who they are. This is who the Brandon Staley Chargers are, right? They go for it pretty much more than anybody else. And so if you allow them to be in a space where it's 4th and goal from the 3 or in, right? Or the 5 or in, they're going to go for it. If it's 4th and 2, 4th and 1, and they're in plus territory, they're usually going to go for it. You know that, so you have to be prepared for it. And I think Tyrann Mathieu was talking about that during the week, just how aggressive they are and how you know that just because you stop them on 3rd down, it doesn't mean that they're not going to get it. Now, I tend to agree with you to a point where it's all right, you don't necessarily want to just be all numbers dictated. I think the only place where I really was kind of I don't know if I would have gone for it there was at the end of the half where you have the opportunity to get points. And then if you don't get points, then you don't have the benefit of Kansas City starting backed up all the way in their own territory. I felt like that's a place where, if you can go up 7, go up 7. I texted my buddies, I don't have the stones that Brandon Staley does to go for it in this situation. I'm a soft boy. I would have taken the field goal there and I would have gone up 7. But I think that when you have that identity, and this is what Staley was talking about in that clip we played, that's how they want to play. That's how they're going to play. I think sometimes establishing that kind of identity, especially in year 1 as a head coach, can maybe be a little bit more important, because the things that you're going to do going forward. So I at least have respect for Staley for just kind of sticking to his guns and knowing that they're going to do these kinds of things and they're always prepared to do it, whether or not they work. It's process over results.
And look, it's easy to stick to your guns and craft this identity when you're in the first year of a 4 or 5 year contract and you're not going to get fired anytime soon. And you're on the right side of 500. Now they're 8-6. I thought would be better than that this year. And they had the opportunity last night to be better than that. And ultimately, and you can't say, well, if they had just kicked one of those field goals, they would have won, because you have to go back to that point and replay the game from there on, because it changes the feel, it changes the vibe, it changes the reaction from the Chiefs based upon what the score is when they get the ball back. But it's tempting to say, boy, this game would have turned out differently if they just would have taken 3 here and 3 there and 3 there. It's 9 points that they left on the board, and it's easy to focus on the 4th down attempts where they failed, because they did convert 2 of them, but still, going for it 5 times, that would have been unheard of not all that long ago. And that's just an example of how all the money that's been spent on the analytics department and the influence that they have, pipeline to the coach, audience with ownership. One of the things I've heard from someone who's been in the fray in recent years, it's a lot harder for the head coach to bamboozle the owner now with jargon, that the owner is armed with data and statistics and pushes back aggressively. And that's one of the benefits that the analytics department provides to ownership, to better communicate with and push back against a head coach who would try to maybe overpower the owner with the same personality traits that are used in the locker room. So it has changed the game in many ways. But I still think, and as you said, when you go for it on 4th down deep in the opponent's territory, because if you don't get it, you are likely to get it back because they're working off of a short field. You potentially working off a short field because they're going to be careful about what they do. Yeah, but in some situations, the half's ending, the game's ending, and I know that anytime we have a a formula for that. And we have a formula for this. There's always the response. Oh, the numbers adjust. The numbers account for that. Anytime you raise a factor, trust us, the numbers account for it. Well, who's coming up with all these formulas? Is there some accepted Bible of formula? Everybody's got their own algorithm, I assume. You got, one guy from MIT that he's got this system, guy from Ivy League school like Columbia, for example, this system. I'm just not sure that I don't like this blind approach to, the numbers say it, so it must be right. Also, you made the Mike Tomlin argument. And I think when Mike Tomlin said what he said about the Ravens, it made a light bulb flicker for me, Myles, because I don't think you ever want to be so predictable in your aggressiveness. I think you want to have an edge of unpredictability in everything you do on a football field, every snap, every situation, every scenario. So when Tyrann Mathieu and his teammates get a big stop on 3rd and 5, that they just aren't assuming, all right, let's go, let's do it again. You make them think about it for 10 seconds. You make the coach think, am I sending in my punt team? Am I sending in my field goal block team? What am I doing here? But when you're dealing with a team that you always know what they're going to do, it takes some of that mental stress out of the game. That's another reason why I don't like, whatever it is, whether you're on the old school side, we always kick, or this Brandon Staley side where we always go for it, I think there are risks to both in being that predictable.
Yeah, exactly. You do want the air of unpredictability. Now, I think even if you know that teams are going to go for it, you don't really know exactly what they're going to run and how they're going to try to get past the sticks in order to keep a drive alive or get into the end zone, whatever it happens to be. But I think we're concurring here because I feel like we're going from different angles to get to the same place, which is basically you need to use the data, but you also need to know the feel of what it is that your team is doing. And so it becomes more of a case-by-case basis whether or not you decide that you're going to be aggressive in a situation or whether you say, you know what, let's just try to get some points here with a kick. And, the other thing about kicking at this point right now is that kickers are not necessarily as good as they used to be, right? They're missing a lot of extra points. And I know that in the last few years, they've moved that extra point back, so it makes it a little bit different. But also, it's not, there are other things that can happen that are bad on a kick, right? Maybe it gets blocked. Maybe somebody doesn't line up properly. So it's not always just that it's an automatic 3 points either. I mean, I think from, the 5-yard line and in, we can assume that a kicker can hit that chip shot. But, we saw your Vikings in the postseason a few years ago, Mike.
Stop.
They didn't really do that. So there are other things that can happen on kicks. But I think that, again, we're concurring here. Like it's got to be a case-by-case basis, and you use the numbers as a tool, not just as a rule.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Another thing that came up this week in the discussions among the writers at PFT, the idea that, with an extra point, and this gets to an issue that didn't come up last night, but it's part of this revolution in thinking about the way you coach a football team and the way you make decisions, the whether or not you go for 2 decision. When you go for 1, you know exactly what you're doing. It's a mechanical exercise in trying to put the ball through the uprights. When you go for 2, okay, now you got to have a play. And this gets back to the consternation of Mike Zimmer, the Vikings coach, a couple of weeks ago when they went for 2 several different times and he didn't like the plays that were called. Well, coach, you kind of got to factor in your list of 2-point plays before you decide to go for 2. It's not just flip a switch, let's go for 2. You got to think, how do I feel about the 2-point conversion plays we've installed this week, that we've practiced this week? Does it work against this defense? How deep on the list of 2-point plays have we already gone? Short yardage plays. Do we want to save this for later? Not save the going for 2 itself, but saving this. I really like this play. My gut tells me I don't want to use it now. That is a real factor here. And Sean Payton's explained that to us, that's one of the reasons why you don't get so wedded to the numbers that you always, all right, time to go, up, chart says go for 2. Yeah, but I'd rather save that play for later. I got a feeling I'm going to need that play later. I don't want to use it now. I'll use it later. Mm-hmm. That's another side of this too. And it gets into, if you're talking about fourth and short, You've got your list of short yardage plays for the week. How do you feel about them? The Chargers apparently felt better about them than they should have last night.
I mean, yeah, but they also, you got to give the Chiefs credit for making plays when they needed to make plays. I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to. I think Steve Spagnuolo was really good at making sure that the Chiefs defense was prepared for the kinds of different plays that the Chargers would run in those kinds of situations, those short yardage situations. And so when guys are making plays, they're getting the tips, they're getting balls batted down, they're having good coverage, they're ready to make a play inside to stop the run. I mean, Justin Herbert, when he goes for it on fourth down, and he's like 6'6", right? All he's got to do is fall forward. That one, I mean, I think makes a hell of a lot of sense. When you have a quarterback of that stature, you just QB sneak it in that short yardage situation. So, like I said, I think that it's got to be case by case. And so that's why you have the best coaches, I think, understand that there are different situations where, yes, the numbers may say one thing, but based on what I'm feeling in the game, based on who may or may not be available for a certain play, based on what the defense has been presenting to us, based on how we played in different ways throughout the course of this game. Coaches love to say that each game takes on a life of its own. And I think that's what you really have to factor into the different decisions of going for it versus kicking it.
This gets back to another point we were making, though, because you gave Steve Spagnuolo the appropriate praise for having his defense ready to make those stops. Probably one of the reasons he had his defense ready to make those stops is they knew all week long who they were playing, knows their identity, knows they're going to go for it on fourth down. We got to be ready for this. They're going to go for it on fourth down. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what I think. I've studied what they've done on fourth down plays in the past. Here's what we got to be ready for. And they made the stops. That's why I'm an advocate of unpredictability in the sport, in every setting. Unpredictability at the line of scrimmage, based on your formations, based on the down and distance, because you become predictable with the things you do. That's why film study is so important. That's why studying, what comes out of a given formation. What are they more likely to do when they have the tight end here versus over here? When they have the running back to the left or the right? When they have two receivers here, all the different ways that you can line up. What's that going to become? All those things. You have to constantly fight against becoming predictable. And this is just the latest iteration of fighting against predictability, because maybe that's ultimately why they failed last night, because the Chiefs knew we're going to be ready for these fourth down plays. That's going to be one of the things we do this week. We're ready to stop them on fourth down. I've been talking to these guys. You know what they do. You know who they are. They don't hide it. We're going to stop them when it's time to go stop them. So that's just more food for thought as we try to evolve into some sort of, and I agree, you and I are concurring more than we're disagreeing here, but my God, you got to tiptoe around the analytics mob. I tried to make a joke last night and they lose their minds. I tweeted, all of these failed fourth down tries by the Chargers could wreak havoc on the formulas that prompted them to go for it in fourth. And don't you understand? It's only 3. There's millions of these things. I know, almost said it. No crap. No crap.
Well,
but the point I've always made about this is those numbers, those formulas are the product of decades of these scenarios. Right. And when I'm the coach of a team, I don't have decades to sign on 100% with this approach, because if I just have a run of bad luck, if the dice aren't hot for me for a couple of years, I'm out of a job because of this. Now, maybe not. Maybe it's gotten to the point where when, you're not going to get grilled by the owner anymore. Why'd you do it? They know why you did it. It's more, why didn't you do what the numbers told you to do? Why were you conservative there? Why did you punt? Why did you kick a field goal? That's the problem. You used to get second-guessed for doing the unconventional thing. Now you get second-guessed for doing the thing that used to be regarded as conventional.
Yes, of course. And so that's why I think that if you're Brandon Staley, I agree with what he said in the press conference after the game, because I think he explained it very, very well. This is who we are. This is our identity. But the thing about identities is, right, you can start to become predictable, but so you have to make sure that, whatever plays you have are not just exactly the same things that you've been running, and you can try to make things a little bit easier on yourself. But when you know that this is what you're going to do, the best teams, you can run what you're going to run and other teams aren't going to be able to stop you. And so, they've got one of the best young QBs in the game. They've got a good running game. I know they didn't have Slater, their left tackle, yesterday, but they've got another one of the good offensive linemen in the game. Like, there are reasons why they can do this and can be successful with this approach. So I get the approach. I really do. And I think that if this is who you want to be, then these are the kinds of decisions that you're going to have to continue to make. But I also understand that sometimes the math, is sometimes overwhelming, and there's other things that factor into it. But I didn't really disagree with any of the times that they went for it last night. I kind of did. Like I said earlier, the only time that I wouldn't have personally done it was at the end of the half, but that's because I don't have the stones that Staley does. And I think that if you are trying to say, look, this is who we are and this is what we're going to be in my head coaching tenure, then you keep doing it. And so mostly it's incumbent on defenses to make sure that they're in unfavorable fourth down situations. Right? There was one play where Eckler comes out of the backfield and he catches it and he gets it from like 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7 to 4th and 2. And it's like, okay, well, that they're going to go for it from that standpoint, right? You have to be able to tackle him when you have the opportunity to make it like 4th and 5 and 4th and 6. And that's more or less where they're going to be a little bit more unpredictable, because at that point they really have to make a decision. If you as a defense allow them to get into favorable fourth down situations, then they've already made the choice. They already know what it is. It's more of that like gray area where it's like 4th and 5, 4th and 6. I don't know. I mean, they could, or maybe they could. Like, that's where maybe they have more of a sense of unpredictability.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.